everybody. Bob Ufer here in the chilly snake pit of Columbus, Ohio.
Elliott has the first down and more, and Elliott's going to have a touchdown.
Carr, watch out! Blake Carr, blazing speed. Can he get there? No, but he's down at the Ohio State 11.
Samuel cuts it back. Ohio State wins.
Stroud in trouble, and Stroud is sacked again.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State, the game of the day, the game of the year, the game of the decade. Call it what you will.
This is The Rivalry, sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
Everybody, and thank you for listening to yet another episode, the episode of the Rivalry podcast. You might notice I'm the only one in the studio right now. That is because Jace, obviously with it being Thanksgiving weekend, he is in Arkansas. And so he is not here. He's not here. You can hear him, though. We tried many different things to get him to be on the TV, and it just was not working. So that was pretty great. But yeah, it's the game. It is what we all listen to this podcast, why we do the podcast, and it is finally here.
Listen, man, I'm pumped to be here. I'm in my mother-in-law's she shed, so things are going real well for the podcast today. Hey, while we get Wheel Route pulled up here, a big thanks to Elevated Integrity Construction for sponsoring season 4 of this podcast. Design build, home build, church build. They do the design element as well as the construction. They're great folks. Go with integrity. It's elevatedintegrity.com, elevatedintegrity.com. And we're super glad that they were willing to come on board here for season 4 of the podcast. And this game this week, this is what it's all about. And the stakes could not be higher. But before we get into that, let's wheel around this, shall we?
All righty, so we've got this going right now. I clicked it a little bit early because I thought, man, it is going to spin forever and ever and ever. We got favorite player, past or present.
All right, so I feel like you've got to go with your home team here. Favorite player or present? That's such a big question. Right now, this is a lot of recency bias, so I don't know if I can say ever. But Ian Hutchinson is just having himself a year in the NFL for the Lions. The Lions are on a 3-game win streak right now. I've got to say Aiden Hutchinson, at least in the "what have you done for me lately" category. I mean, my goodness. Huge influence, obviously, in last year's game, and still having just a great impact in the NFL. I'm a big fan of his.
I'm going to go Justin Fields right now. I think, man, when you watch him play, especially in the NFL, he's electric. I mean, the dude is clearly a good quarterback. They just got to get him some talent. But, man, it is so fun to watch him play. I just wish it was on a better team. It's sad to just see kind of the stuff that he gets surrounded with. Hopefully he can figure out something. They can get some talent around him. But, man, he's probably my favorite OSU quarterback in recent memories.
Okay, that's fair. Let's start with Ohio State this week, just for kicks and giggles. What in the world was that, man?
Yeah, and we talked about it. I specifically said on the podcast last week that this was going to be a game that the past 2 games, Tagovailoa had under 80 yards or maybe 80 yards passing for the entire game. He was too good to not break that. And he did. Yeah. He was exactly what you expected out of him the entire game. And we talked about it throughout the season. That was a game, that was a quarterback, especially with a weak secondary that Ohio State has had all year, that was going to test them. And I think we were correct about that. I mean, it showed on the game that Ohio State's cornerbacks are still a liability. The secondary is not as good as people want to make it out to be. Lathan Ransom had himself a game, but also he got beat a few times. He was costly on some plays. And I don't know. I expected Tagovailoa to play the way that he played. I still thought Ohio State should have dominated them a little bit more. And this was another game, much like the Penn State game, where it was close the entire way through until the very end. And if you're a box score watcher, you looked at this and said, well, they beat them by 10 plus points. What's the problem? and don't take into account that, yes, they got another touchdown literally on the last play of the game, and it was much closer than you would think.
Yeah, it was a Maryland had the ball with a chance to go down and win the game. And they were 26 and a half point dogs. I mean, that's, well, and we'll get to that with Michigan too, but like you can tell me till you're blue in the face, you're not looking past an opponent. I think both teams were guilty of it this week. I think you're going to have a hard time selling. You're going to have a hard time selling me on the fact that Ohio State and Michigan, for that matter, weren't looking ahead to next week and almost got caught.
Oh, 100%. But I do think you got to give Ohio State's defense minor credit. I don't want to make it seem like they played great the whole game. But when it mattered on that last drive, after Maryland had been able to just go right down the field, they finally got some pressure, and it showed a little bit of heart. And, I mean, that's why they got the touchdown at the end of the day to close out the game, is because the effort was there. And I don't think it was there throughout the whole game. But when it mattered, they stepped up. And so I do want to give them a little bit of credit. I just wish that I could see that kind of intensity, that kind of passion throughout an entire game.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like again, it's the week, so there's going to be no punches pulled here. If I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm concerned by that performance. I'm concerned that my defense, I know Maryland's a decent offense, but especially given the struggles that they've had, I'm concerned that my defense gave up 30 points to a turtle. You know, I'm concerned that Maryland's, frankly, give Maryland's defense a little bit of credit too. Mm-hmm. I mean, they held them to 30. I mean, again, de facto
30 points,
de facto 36 points. You know, like it's not a stellar defensive performance we're going to talk about, but I expected Ohio State to hang upper 40s into the 50s on this team, and they didn't do it.
I thought the offense expected 50. I expected 30 something, maybe low 40s.
They don't have a good defense though, and I think that would be a concern for me. But end of the day, you get the job done. Here's the deal. There's a lot of things for both teams, both Michigan and Ohio State, that you are going to be able to learn from. Like, both teams showed things that have the other group licking their chops a little bit. Mm-hmm. But you also both got wins and can address some of those things. So, I don't know.
If you want to see our full meltdown, because both of our teams had very, very close games, you can follow us at RivalPod on Twitter, and you can just see the progression of, oh, yeah, let's go, to, oh, no, what is happening? Please, Lord, let's get this corrected.
Jesus, I've seen what you've done for other people, and I'm asking you to do that for me.
Well,
my goodness.
So Michigan, first off, I want to start off by saying you laughed at me last week when I said that this was going to be a closer game and that Illinois would actually win. They didn't end up winning, but man, they made it close.
Yeah, what I said was there is no world that exists where Illinois will beat Michigan, and I was right. And that's really all that we need to say about that game.
Is it?
No, so this was an interesting one, right? Like, so two top defenses in the country. At least two top. It's two top defenses in the country, two top running backs in the country. I'm not surprised the game was close, but I'm surprised that it stayed close, if that makes sense. I'm not surprised by. So let's walk right up until the Blake Corum injury, okay?
Yeah.
So Michigan is on the verge of going in and scoring to make it what's probably going to end up being a 14-3 game at the half. That's pretty much what I expected out of this game. But Corum gets hit in the knee. He fumbles the football inside the 15 because he goes to grab that knee, understandably so. So now not only does Michigan not be up 14-3, now Illinois has the ball, and your Heisman candidate running back is out for the game. That, up until that point, the game probably went about how I expected. Michigan was playing good football. The game shifted at that point. And I don't think that it's entirely on that injury, but you definitely felt the game turn from that point on, right?
Yeah.
The whole feel of the game was different. So I am surprised that it stayed that close, but I also understand it. And it shows just how, when we talk about things like the Heisman, it shows just how valuable Blake Corum is to that team. Not having Donovan Edwards there to back him up, credit to Stokes and to Gash and to Dunlap and guys that tried to carry it. it wasn't there. The run game was not there without your top two guys. I saw some Ohio State beat trying to say, hey, well, Ohio State's down to some running backs too. No. This is the equivalent of losing C.J. Stroud. That's the comparison here is Ohio State trying to win without Stroud is what Michigan is trying to do winning without Corum. Now, they got it done, but not pretty. Here's the good news for Michigan. The good news for Michigan is that the reports coming out of the Corum injury are that the X-rays were all negative, that everything is structurally intact, and the word bruise was thrown around quite a bit. The other interesting thing is that Blake Corum is just a good human.
Yeah, we need to touch on this.
Yeah, he did this last year, but he is using his NIL money, at least some of it, to provide turkeys for people in the community that are less fortunate. So he's out there, not just like, hey, I organized this thing. He's out there in the freezing cold on Sunday morning, carrying turkeys to people in the community. That's an incredible thing. So on the human side, that's awesome. That's just an awesome way to give back. On the football side, I'm guessing his knee is probably going to be all right if he is out the next day in the freezing cold, carrying turkeys up and down the sidewalk. And someone even asked him, he said, it's fine. I'm fine. I'm all right. I'll be back.
Yeah, and I think him being held out was kind of precautionary because of the game. Yeah.
Well, and the fact that this is what, the fact that he came back in for a snap. I mean, there's no, I'm sorry, but there's no way that if they thought that there was any sort of structural damage, there's no way that he takes another snap in that game.
Yeah, no
so
chance.
that to me confirms, that it's, that to me confirms bruise and it's bothering him. And he said, I can't go right now. And that tells me that he's got a week to, get the shots and get the ice and do all, stretch it out and do all the things he needs to do. Will he be fully healthy? No, probably not. But I'll take 80% Corum. I'll take 80% Corum, and the hope too is that Donovan Edwards is back and can shoulder some of that load for him. And that's going to be a big factor. So anyway, that's on Corum. Some other critical things that I think come out of that game is I made a comment when Michigan was down 17-13. They had the ball in the red zone. It was like 4th and 11, and Harbaugh decided to kick a field goal with 3 minutes left. And I was enraged. So you've cut a 1-score game to a 1-score game, and are giving Illinois the ball back to the nation's best running back with 3 minutes to go. And then at the end of the day, you go, oh, okay, I guess that's why you kicked the field goal there, is because you trust your defense that much. But I could hardly believe it, man.
Yeah, I thought after they went for it on the fourth down, I thought, okay, well, this is telling Illinois they're going for it. They're getting the touchdown, and that's what they're aiming for. And then to settle for the field goal, I do want to give a little bit of credit. It's the only nice thing that I'm going to say about Michigan the rest of this podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I did think that the play calling was phenomenal for those 4th down conversions, but I also thought that they were predictable. I thought, man, if you're Illinois, I don't understand how you're not more prepared for that, because I felt like every time it was 4th down, you knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I just don't know why they weren't loading up closer to the line to try and cut those little like screen passes off. I don't understand that from an Illinois defensive side of the game, but it was there and Michigan exploited it, and that's why they ended up getting the game.
The big question that I saw from a lot of Illinois folks, and first of all, can we address that Brett Bielema is the biggest whiner that I've ever seen? My goodness. He's complaining. Yeah. Would you like some cheese with that wine, sir? Like he's complaining about that he thought Michigan was late out of the here's the tunnel thing again, right?
Oh, well, I saw that. Gross.
We've got protocol in place. We've got extra security, extra protocol because Michigan State doesn't know how to control themselves. And so we'll beef up stuff, we'll do protocol, and then Bielema's upset because he thought teams were late and his team was held up. Coach the game, man. Coach the game.
No impact on the actual game.
Here's where I thought that he at least had a case, because I think we need to address it. The 4th down pass to Isaiah Gash, that he was screaming that it was a pick play. I think he's got a case.
Yeah,
I'm willing to admit that I thought that Loveland got his hands up, and you can't You cannot block like that. Was it egregious? I don't think so, but I think it was a penalty. I think it was a pretty clear penalty that they missed. But also, I'll throw this out there. On 4th down earlier in the game, McCarthy thought he had offsides, which should have been thrown, tosses a deep ball up to Anthony. There's no call on the play. It would have given Michigan a 1st down there, so the whole game shifts on that play too. You got to overcome. There were calls on 4th down that went both ways. Both teams, I thought, got screwed in different points. You got to make your plays. Well, you had the ball. You had the ball with 3 minutes to go and the nation's leading rusher, and you went 3 and out. I mean, that's on you.
Well, and we've said it before. Don't let the officials decide the game.
Right.
Simple.
Like I'm willing to say I'm willing to go, yeah, it was a pick play and it should have been called. I'm also willing to say earlier in the game, McCarthy had a 4th down that would have really mattered, and there was no offsides call. He thought he had a free play. So, it balances out at the end of the day. I do want to address one more thing that I think got lost in the midst of games. I mean, this was a game of inches, right?
Yeah.
Michigan had, and I think that there were at least 2. Michigan had 2 4th and 1 stops that in hindsight critically affect this game. Mm-hmm. Freshman Mason Graham had a beautiful 4th and 1 stuff earlier in the game that, again, in hindsight, you go, man, that really shifts things. The other big one, though, was a phenomenal heads-up play by Jamon Green. This is his first game back after the tunnel incident, and Illinois had it 4th and 1 deep in Michigan territory. This was early in I think maybe second quarter. 4th and 1, they're going for it. And if you watch the replay, Illinois takes a false start. Jamon Green, you can watch him bark to his line. The whole line shifts together, and it causes an offensive lineman to jump. That is a heads-up play by a graduate senior to cause Illinois to have to back up 5 yards and kick a field goal that ends up being a huge difference maker in that game. That's one of those things that I think gets lost. That's the type of impact that your seniors are supposed to have. And that's just a really good job. I was really proud of that.
My takeaways from this game, it kind of showed just how one-sided Michigan's offense really is. Which, I mean, I would say the same thing if C.J. Stroud went down. You lose Quorum. He doesn't play. Edwards doesn't play for the entire game. You're on your 3rd string running back, and there were a couple of drops by receivers that we mentioned on our Twitter account during it that showed they're just not super reliable. I think it's not news. It's not groundbreaking news that Michigan's going to come in and run the ball, but it did show
even that
weakness.
free play.
I mean, they struggled to move the ball when they didn't have those guys, which, I mean, it's not rocket science to say that, but if I'm Ohio State, I'm going, okay, well, when I game plan defensively this week, as it should have already been, but even more so now, stop Quorum, stop Edwards, and you're going to put yourself in a great chance to win that ball game.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't disagree with you. Like even the free play, right? Where you have a shot. It's like, oh, it was supposed to be a free play. Yeah, it was, and that really affects the game. But also, you hit Antrell Anthony in the hands. He's got to come down with it. That's a touchdown.
Late in the game, there were a couple of drops that McCarthy had placed right there. There were a couple of times he overthrew.
Well, you feel sick for Isaiah Gash on that little, where he comes back to redeem himself. Well, fair enough, but he comes back to redeem himself. But I mean, he's got a touchdown, and then on the next play, you're right, he had Loveland wide open, and he missed him. It's what I said I think last week, where I don't think the offensive, like the passing game. I mean, they still threw for over 200, I think. The passing game, I don't think is as bad as everyone thinks it is. It's also not nearly as good as we thought it was.
Yeah.
They are, if they have to rely on passing, I'll say that. If they have to rely on passing to win the game, they're in trouble. Your game plan for Ohio State is oversimplified. Stop Gorman Edwards. Well, yeah, I mean, for Michigan, it's stop C.J. Stroud and you win the game. Easier said than done, for sure.
It's not so much. Well, I mean, I guess stopping CJ, yes, but I think for them, there's big question marks on the Ohio State, and I guess this is a good way to transition.
Yeah, man. Let's have at it.
Right into the game. I will be there at the game. First off, makes me sick to my stomach thinking about it. I am so nervous.
I have never been so glad to not be at a football game. So you have fun, bud.
Oh, man, it is going to be the worst football I've ever seen, and I will enjoy it afterwards when Ohio State wins.
It's not just a game, it's the game. You're listening to The Rivalry.
I look at this and there's question marks that I have where I go, okay, how healthy is Henderson? How healthy is Mayan Williams? Those are my two biggest question marks going into the game. If they play, at least it opens up the offense a little bit more. The difference for me between stopping Ohio State's offense and stopping Michigan's offense, we have to stop one person in Corum. I mean, Edwards is okay. He's a good player. He's dangerous. He can provide some big plays. You've got Ibuka, you have Julian Fleming, you have Marvin Harrison, which I don't know if there's a cornerback in the NCAA Division I football that can stop him. And you have CJ Stroud who can deliver the ball. I mean, to me, Michigan absolutely, to have a chance to win this game, has to put pressure on Stroud, get some sacks, cause him to run outside of the pocket, make some runs make some throws on the run. And that's how you beat Ohio State. You force him out of his comfort zone, because if he has even a little bit of time to stand in that pocket, it is going to be a long, long day.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like deja vu all over again, right? Like it's the same game plan for Michigan as last year, and it's the same game plan for Ohio State as last year. It's just who's going to go make the plays. I don't believe. Here's the reality. Ohio State's offense is just so good.
Yeah.
I don't think that their wide receiving core is any better than it was last year. It's still so dangerous. But my question, the reason I bring that up is it any better than last year? No. Like, there's no way it's better than Njigba, Wilson, and Olave.
I don't know if it's worse.
No, I'm not saying it's worse. I'm saying it's just as good. I'm just saying it's not. I don't think it could have gone better than last year.
Yeah,
I think it's maintained. And the reason I say that is, look at what Michigan did last year. They held Ohio State to one passing touchdown. It was to Garrett Wilson. That was it. Ohio State still threw the ball on Michigan, but Michigan gave up one passing touchdown. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Look at what those guys are doing in the NFL right now. So I'm saying that it's not tailed off at all. I'm saying it's maintained. So what that tells me as a Michigan fan is we still have the game plan. You can run the exact same game plan you had last year. I wrote it down this way, and you basically read my notes here, right? Michigan wins if the pass rush gets Stroud off rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer. That lets Michigan run the ball through a fool's face and control time of possession. Same thing they did last year. Ohio State wins if Stroud has time to pick them apart, because that forces Michigan to play catch up, like we just said, and I don't know that they can do that. Now, so really for me, it's the line of scrimmage, offensive line versus defensive line when Ohio State has the ball. That's going to be the big question for me. You're going to score points. You're going to throw the ball. The question is, can Michigan? So I look at a team like Maryland, where Maryland did especially in the first half, a decent job getting Ohio State off the field. If Michigan can do that, Michigan's got the type of offense that is going to, again, ground and pound and controls time of possession. That's what Michigan wants to do. And I think that line of scrimmage when Ohio State has the ball is going to be a big, big factor.
Yeah, you don't hear it talked about much. But to me, this game is going to be won in the trenches.
Yep, absolutely.
You look at playmakers, and obviously both teams have a good set of them. I mean, we talk about Ohio State's wide receiver core. I still think Ohio State's running back room is talented with Williams and Henderson. Obviously, even Dallin Hayden coming out this last week against Maryland,
he had a good game,
having himself a day. They've got the talent on the offensive side of the ball. Michigan, they obviously have Corum. I would say Ronnie Bell's another weapon for them that's been reliable all throughout the season. Edwards, obviously, when he plays.
If they can get Luke Schoonmaker back, that's going to be a huge factor as well. And Loveland has stepped in nicely as well. Like that's more Michigan stuff. Like those are the type of plays, the type of guys that they're going to use. They're not. I mean, the deep ball's not there the way it is for Ohio State. Mm-hmm. It's just a different type of pass attack where it's not quite dink and dunk. Like that's not fair to what McCarthy does, but it's more short passes. For sure.
And I think for me, when I look at this game, and then we can give our predictions, for me, Ohio State has to jump up on them and get on them early. Michigan, the past couple of games,
I would agree with
last
that.
podcast, we talked about the numerous times that at half it was a close game. Michigan was either trailing, they were barely winning, it was tied. You have to jump on them early, and you have to get up 10 plus points, 14 plus points early, because you need to get the ball out of Corum and Edwards' hands. And if you can't stop them, that's another way to try, is to get up by so many that they have to stop running the ball because they have to conserve time, and you have to force McCarthy to pass, because I think due to the ability that they have to run the ball, they've not had to rely on McCarthy's arm ever. And while I do think that he has the talent eventually to be one of those gunslinging type quarterbacks, I don't think he's progressed there this season. And I think that is how, if you are Ohio State, you make him beat your secondary, which is still making me a little bit worried. But I feel more confident in that than I feel about us being able to stop Corum. And so for me, Michigan's game plan is the same as last year. You run it down their throat. You take as much time off that clock and don't give that offense a chance to get on there at home, put points on the board. You take super long, boring 5-6 minute drives, get a touchdown. And that is how you beat Ohio State. You get the ball out of their offense's hands by just not allowing them to get on the field, and you punch it down their throat. And that is how Michigan wins.
So give me your prediction then. That's a good setup. Give me your score.
I have a lower scoring game.
Okay.
I've got 24-17 Buckeyes.
Wow. Defense.
I think the running game's going to get it going. I think because Ohio State's at home, I think they're going to want the revenge from last year. I do think the defense is better than last year. I don't think it's as good as advertised, but I think with the home crowd behind them, and I think they'll come out with some intensity because of the game. I'm hoping that they can come out and they can prove something. I'm thinking because it's a home game, they're going to be able to prevent a ton of points from being scored. So I feel confident 24-17 Buckeyes.
Man, we went very different directions. So here's my little short lead up, and then we won't belabor the point. You already know who I'm picking.
Ohio State does.
These are, and we already hit on this, right? Like, these are two fairly and I say fairly one-dimensional teams, right? Like, but it kind of happens that one dimension for both teams is pretty good. It's Heisman caliber passing against Heisman caliber rushing.
Yep.
Right. So we already said, I think that Ohio State's offensive line against Michigan's defensive line, I think that's where the game is going to be won. I think the defense is going to be the key factor for both teams. Right. Can you stop Corum or Edwards? Can Michigan disrupt what Stroud's going to try to do? And I'll tell you, I trust Michigan's defense more than I trust Ohio State's. I trust Michigan's defense more than I trust Ohio State's offensive line. I trust Michigan's defense more than I trust Ohio State's defense. I watched Maryland perform offensively, and I'm imagining trying to couple that with a top-tier defense. I think Michigan has enough to – Ohio State's still going to score points on you, but I think Michigan can get Stroud off rhythm. I think that if they can force him early, I think Stroud is going to try to force things. Every player on that field wants this game. Mm-hmm. And I've seen Stroud get rattled. Even at home, I've seen him get rattled and start overthrowing guys. I think Michigan can disrupt him. I think they can get in his head a little bit. I have Michigan 38-34. I think there's a lot of offense in this game, and I think Michigan's just got a little bit too much for Ohio State on Saturday.
The one thing I do want to add to this game is the Heisman. I think this is the game because right now I wouldn't say that there's a clear-cut number one guy in the lead.
It's one of the two guys playing on Saturday,
and I think that'll be the game. Whoever performs best in that game is going to be the one that ends up taking it home. And there's more than the game.
Go ahead,
Caleb Williams. Sure, he can get thrown in there as well, but I think at the end of the day, I mean, I know Stroud has been the leader throughout the season. Him and Bryce Young swapped early, but then CJ's kind of taken the reins throughout the late part of the season.
The Hendon Hooker injury.
Yeah, the Hendon Hooker injury devastating. Plus, I think you got to look at their individual teams and stuff too. I think once Alabama dropped their second game, Bryce Young lost his chance.
Yeah, for sure.
I think this game decides not only who gets to go to, obviously, the Big Ten championship and the playoffs, it decides the Heisman for me.
I think so, too.
There's a lot more writing, which makes it that much more interesting. Before we head off of here, though, we have to discuss something else, and then we can close.
What did we miss?
Rutgers to the Rose Bowl.
It did. The bowl game is dead.
I gave it a funeral last week preemptively, and I was correct. They got absolutely demolished.
You were.
55-10 was the final, I believe, for that Penn State game, which was just absolutely atrocious. Last game now going up against Maryland. That is going to be just disgusting. And Rutgers is going to finish with 4 wins on the season, which is more than actually what Vegas said that we would get. So you know what? I'm going to take that and I'm going to run with it. I'm going to run with it. Next year, though, Rutgers to the Rose Bowl is alive and well, and I can't wait for it.
Well, it's alive. I don't know if it's well.
Yeah, true. Fair. I'll take that.
One other thing I'd throw out there is fairly critical. If your team loses on Saturday at noon, congratulations, you're a Notre Dame fan for the rest of the day. Tennessee getting just mauled by South Carolina should be the end of Tennessee's season.
Yep. From
a playoff perspective. LSU is not a threat. They're not going to beat Georgia. If they beat Georgia, okay, all bets are off. Sure.
Yeah, it'll be crazy.
LSU ain't going to beat Georgia. So if you're looking at Georgia, you're looking at the winner of Ohio State, Michigan. You're looking at TCU.
Which TCU still has to win championship.
TCU still has to play in the Big 12 championship, sure. So you're probably also a big Kansas State fan, but USC is the team that should scare you because USC is going to have their 1 losses to Utah. Now, Utah's got 3 losses now, so it's not hey, if you lose, you're done if USC wins out. It's not that, but boy, would Notre Dame beating USC really make it easy for the committee to put Michigan and Ohio State in.
Well, look, and Notre Dame's been playing well.
We're not doing that. We're not, well. Not today.
Just
not
saying,
today.
Playing well.
But if you happen to lose, obviously despair, discouragement, but a reminder in the back of your head that the season's not over. You've still got a chance to get into the playoff. So you better get your head back up because it's not over yet. Now, is it devastating? Absolutely. And I'm really sorry that you're going to have to go through that, JP.
It's not happening, but okay.
Hey, remember that your prediction for Ohio State, Michigan on Instagram at 1049 The River, on Twitter at RivalPod could win you an Amazon gift card. So make sure you tweet at us at RivalPod or go on Instagram at 1049 The River. Give us your score prediction. You could win an Amazon gift card. Man, this is going to be absolutely no fun and a lot of fun all at the same time. I will not
be texting you at all that day.
Nope. That's the beautiful thing about this.
Even in victory, I will refrain.
Nope.
I will save all of my energy for the next time we're in this studio together.
See, that's the thing is like what I appreciate about doing this podcast is that we can after the game, like regardless, like at some point, once either of us kind of settles down, I'll text you and go, hey, what did you think about that? And I know, and we both know, hey, we know what it's like to be on the other side. Like, it's cool. The people that are going to text me are the people that I have not, if Michigan loses, or the people I haven't heard from in 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not getting a response. Todd, if you're listening to this, you are not getting a response to your text. Okay? We ain't going to do that. So enjoy the game as much as you can. Enjoy once it's over, and we'll see where we go from there.
Awesome.
Don't forget, by the way, if you sorry, I was going to throw this out there. By the way, if you missed the College Football Playoff Ranking Show instant reaction this week, that is on Twitter as well at RivalPod. Be sure to check that out. Some nice little shakeups there in the top 10.
Awesome. We'll see you guys. You can follow us again at RivalPod on Twitter.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter at RivalPod for live tweets, score predictions, contests, and more. And make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now for new episodes every Wednesday. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.